Your Superior Self, episode 44.
And that nothing worked. My business failed, my health failed, my marriage failed, everything in my life failed. And yet all I want to do was become the most amazing family man ever, right? And I was failing at that. My biggest goal I was completely failing at. And so we separated. She moved out. We agreed to that. Eventually, I was going to sell the house anyway, so it's not like she abandoned the house. We have a very, very good relationship. I have a good relationship with the new guy as well. But early on, when she moved out, I was home with Quinn, and there's days where he's over there. And I literally just want to crawl in a hole and wish that when I go to bed, I would not wake up. There's times where, I consider... I don't think I considered, but I had thoughts of wanting to die, And as a parent, as you know, when a child cries in the middle of the night, it's kind of a sign that the child is alive, right? And but there's one night where Quinn went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and I didn't remember him crying at all. And I was like, my heart just started racing, thinking something happened to him. Like, did he choke on a blanket or whatever? Like, I had all these like crazy thoughts. And I rushed over his room, and then there he was, sitting up, first time sleeping through the night and playing with his whatever he had in his hands. I don't remember right now, but he was smiling, just full of joy, so happy to see me. And that's when I picked him up, and I literally said to him, I'm never going to give up on you or on me, never, ever again. And from that point on, I picked my ass up.
What is going on, Superior Nation? I am Trey Downs, and this is your Superior Self podcast. I am a blue-collar worker turned into blue-collar entrepreneur, and each week I will interview inspiring influencers who will help you become your superior self. Thank you for joining me today, and let's get after it. During the month of January, I will be reading excerpts from the book, The 48 Laws of Power, written by Robert Greene. It is a national bestseller. It also has been banned from numerous prison institutions due to the influence of these laws. And today I'll be reading law number 4, always say less than necessary. And the excerpt that I want to read in law number 4 goes like this. By saying less than necessary, you create the appearance of meaning and power. Also, the less you say, the less risk you run of saying something foolish, even dangerous. In 1825, a new Tsar, Nicholas I, ascended the throne of Russia. A rebellion immediately broke out, led by the liberals, demanding that the country modernize, that its industries and civil structures catch up with the rest of Europe. Brutally crushing this rebellion, Nicholas I sentenced one of its leaders, Ryleyev, to death. On the day of the execution, Ryleyev stood on the gallows, the noose around his neck. The trapdoor opened, but as Ryleyev dangled, the rope broke, dashing him to the ground. At the time, events like this were considered signs of providence or heavenly will, and a man saved from execution this way was usually pardoned. As Ryleyev got to his feet, bruised and dirtied, but believing his neck had been saved, he called out to the crowd. You see, in Russia, they don't know how to do anything properly, not even how to make rope. A messenger immediately went to the Winter Palace with news of the failed hanging. Vexed by this disappointing turnabout, Nicholas I nevertheless began to sign the pardon. But then, did Ryleyev say anything after this miracle? The Tsar asked the messenger. Sire, the messenger replied, he said that in Russia, they don't even know how to make rope. In that case, said the Tsar, let us prove the contrary. And he tore up the pardon. The next day, Ryleyev was hanged again. This time, the rope did not break. Learn the lesson. Once the words are out, you cannot take them back. Keep them under control. The number 4 law of power resonates with me big time because I'm a passionate guy, and sometimes I get emotional about some subjects that we are discussing, and I might say something that offends someone, or you might say something that offends a family member, And once you say it, like, you can't take that back. Like, it is going to be with them forever. Even though you say you're sorry, you apologize, or whatever, like, it's always going to be there. It's always been, it's done, it's said, it's too late. And if you are ever in a position where you don't know what to say, I need to start practicing this, is be silent. Silence speaks louder than words. I know it's easy to say, but it's harder to practice. That is one thing in 2019 that I need to do a little bit more of, is just be silent. Also in 2019, I will be starting a mastermind. It's going to be called Your Superior Mastermind Group, and it's going to be focused on building a strong community of individuals who are focused on being the best version of themselves. Whether that might be professionally or personally, we are going to support each other 100% and provide feedback and support for each individual's journey. We're going to create clear goals for ourselves, along with creating a clear path to those goals. We're going to be executing that path and holding one another accountable. I am so excited about this opportunity to be working with some of the individuals in the group already. If you haven't filled out an application, please go to my Instagram account at tdowns80 and click the link in the bio. It will take you to a website where you can fill out an application. It's only about 9 questions or so. I want to know a little bit about you and why you want to join the mastermind, as well as how do you define success. If you want to send me an email, you can do that as well at traydowns@superiorself.net. I will send you the link to the application, and then we can get after it. And speaking of building a community, I am fired up over today's guest. His name is Tuan Nguyen. He is the host of the podcast, the awesome Bizdads podcast. Each week, Tuan connects with awesome Bizdads all over the world as they share game-changing lessons and epic failures on fatherhood, self-care, business, and relationships. If you feel like the entrepreneurship spirit has been amplified in you since being a father, this is the podcast for you. Tuan has also created the online community where Bizdads can express their deepest challenges and most ambitious goals in wealth, business, fatherhood, relationships, and wellness, with the intention of releasing it out and receiving support from fellow awesome and conscious Bizdads, aka Dude Buddha. So without further ado, it is my honor to be able to bring to you Tuan Nguyen. Hey guys, real quick before the interview, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you for hanging out with me today. Thank you for listening to the podcast. Make sure to leave a rating and a review, and also subscribe so you can get these episodes every week. I love hanging out with you guys. If you love this episode as much as I think you will, please take a screenshot and share it on Instagram. Thanks, guys. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to Your Superior Self. Today, I am joined by a special guest. He is one of my Dude Buddha boys, Tuan Nguyen. How are you, buddy?
Awesome. Thanks for the invite here.
So I'm very excited that we were able to connect and finally get you on the show. I've been wanting to do this for a very, very long time. For my listeners who haven't heard of you yet, can you give us like a quick bio on what you're up to today?
Well, today I guess I'm an entrepreneur. I run a few different types of businesses. First one is a business in the dental space. I do some what they call dental practice advisory services. So I help a clinic do well, and primarily through acquisitions of more practices. It's not like the biggest passion project, but it supports the family, and I'm able to automate most of it. So that's that, and we could talk about that later on. The other thing is I have a little apparel company with a buddy named Matt Britt, and we like to spread hugs and positivity. So we have this clothing company, and through some really lucky, goofy marketing programs, we're able to sell quite a bit of T-shirts and caps and stuff, and raise money to give to different charities. And then my passion project is kind of how you and I got connected. Is I host a community called the Dude Buddhas, and these are the awesome and conscious Bizdads. And essentially, it's a place where we support each other in overcoming some of our deepest thoughts, whether it be present, past, or super present, around business, relationship, wealth, fatherhood, and of course self-care. And the whole goal of it is really to help men succeed in businesses without sacrificing relationships with themselves and the people that matter to them. So like that's like the overall, I guess, picture, and I'll let you take it from there where you want to take this chat.
Well, I'm just gonna ask you now, like, how did you come up with the dude Buddha?
Yeah, that's a good one. So I grew up in the streets. So I grew up on welfare and social aid when I came from Vietnam just over 40 years ago. And you know, so I'm in the streets and kind of with all these gangsters and stuff like that. So we're gangsters, I guess, right? But I've always been spiritual, and I remember just hanging out with a bunch of guys, and we used to like break dance on the street on cardboard paper. And one guy would say, "Dude, man, you're like this gangster, but you're spiritual." I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm the gangsta Buddha," right? And so my nickname was Gangsta Buddha, and for a while, and then I remember learning I could buy a domain called Gangsta Buddha, and I've owned it ever since. I haven't really ran with it. And the truth is, I was going to call it the Gangsta Buddhas because I'm the Gangsta Buddha, right? And but at the end of the day, I could dive into the story of how it formed, but once the tribe was building, you know, and we had a big group of dudes just supporting each other, they said, "Yo, man, we got to come up with a name for our tribe." And at that time, I offered Gangsta Buddha, and they're like, there's a couple guys from London, England, and they're like, "Oh, you know, gangsta. I'm not really gangsta. I don't resonate with that word," right? So they're saying, "All right, fine, okay, you don't resonate with Gangsta Buddha." So I had other domain names, like when I became a dad, I bought Dad Buddha, and I had Dude Buddha sometime after Gangsta Buddha. I don't remember when I purchased it. So I remember offering to the crowd. I said, "Guys, what about Dad Buddha or Dude Buddha?" And I was pretty sure most men were going to choose Dad Buddha because what brought us together was the desire to be awesome dads, right? But they all voted dude, like unanimously, except for of 300 guys, about 200 voted, and maybe 10 said Dad Buddha. Everybody else voted dude, and I was like totally surprised. And that's when I learned that they felt that by our tribe being together, we learned that we're really just dudes playing the role of a dad, playing the role of a businessman, playing the role of a husband, partner, you know, contributor to the community. So calling it Dude Buddha reminds us that we're dudes, right? And the Buddhism part is it's not a religious group by any means. Far from that. Like we are open and non-judgmental to all religious beliefs. But in Buddhism, at least, what I learned, I grew up Buddhist, but I actually was more Catholic because of the schools I went to. But I learned that I thought growing up there was one Buddha, but I learned that when you grow up or when someone becomes enlightened, or they say come to a state of nirvana, great band by the way, you become a Buddha. So there's many, many Buddhas. And so to me, dude is us. And then when we go on a path of becoming awesome and conscious as men, because it's never a destiny, it's a journey, we all are essentially a dude Buddha. And there's many dude Buddhas all over the world. And we might have little names that mine is the Gangsta Buddha. Some guy calls himself the Canvas Buddha because he paints all the time, even though he's like a marketing guy, but he paints by night, so he calls himself the Canvas Buddha. Another guy is a mortgage guy, but he calls himself the Beats Buddha because he's a DJ by night. So it's kind of cool how we're all dude Buddhas, but we still have kind of a dude Buddha name. So there's the long about, answer how we came up with Dude Buddha.
I love it, dude.
Thanks.
Buddha. So you grew up in Vietnam, right?
I was born there, but I left after only 20 days old.
Really? And then you came over here. So, like, is there any family back there, or is it everybody's over here?
We have some family there, but I mean, I guess the part of the journey that maybe the listeners might find kind of cool because this is part of the story that I tell often because it just brings to reality how much we have in control of our life, right? And after 20 days, we left. So I was born April 9th, 1975, and 20 days later, pop on a boat and off we went. And basically, it was the time of I call it the changing of the guards. You know, some people used to call it the fall of Vietnam, but I guess I'm trying to be somewhat unbiased and neutral and just calling it change of the guards. But we're out there, and my mom was carrying me. I was only 20 days old, and for the parents out there, you'll understand how delicate a child is at 20 days old. And I remember holding my own son at 20 days old. And to imagine that after several days in the water, my mom thought she was carrying a dead baby. I stopped moving, didn't feel like I was breathing, and she was sure I was gone. but she just held on to me. But the grace of God or the universe or whatever, a U.S. carrier came by and picked a whole bunch of boats up, and ours was one of them. And that's when they shocked me back to life, probably the very 11th and 59th minute hour. And then they brought me to Hawaii, at which point I flatlined again. But then they brought me back to life at that point, and I've been alive since, right? And so, I mean, that's the story of me coming from Vietnam. I ended up in Canada because my mom's side was in Canada, and I guess there might have been a better support group. I don't know exactly why we ended up going from San Francisco to Canada, but I primarily grew up in Montreal. I would consider myself French speaking. I speak English and Vietnamese, and it's been quite the journey since coming here.
Holy crap, bro. That's great. I didn't know that about you. So how do you think that has shaped you as far as a father? Like that experience right there.
Well, I mean that alone, obviously, I was just saying to a buddy the other day that I have more memories of my son than my own dad and I had, right? And it basically, as an immigrant, or even as a family that struggles, even if you are not an immigrant and you've struggled as a family, you just know how difficult it is to be there for your kids. You're just so busy working and trying to stay alive and keep the roof, covering the family and not getting kicked out, that my parents didn't see, or I didn't see much of them. And my dad also had a pretty brutal heart attack early on too. So most of my life I've known my dad as someone who was very sick. And on the outside might be like sad, but at the end of the day, you and I and listeners can probably relate to the fact that when people are sick and they're living with pain, they end up becoming incredibly empathetic people because they feel other people's pain. So through my dad's illness, I've learned incredible amounts of empathy because he taught empathy to me as he felt other people's pain as well. So I mean that this all shaped me as a father. It all gave me what I call God-given purpose, because when you grow up with this story saying that you should have been dead twice and you're alive, one, you kind of don't give a crap about a lot of things because you can't say anything. You're not allowed to say anything because you haven't had your heart stop twice on you, right? And then I say to most people, it's like, when there's a crisis of life, suddenly your brain starts functioning very, very differently. It starts operating areas within the brain that you never thought was possible, and you start producing results in your life that you never thought was possible. So I'm really a huge believer in everyone on this planet, all their abilities, all their dreams, and I believe that they can all come true just because having seen and been part of near death or death experience and other people who've shared the same story, I see how the brain and the spirit can completely shift if you just treat your life with a lot more preciousness, if that's such a word in English, or be more precious. Or people know what I'm talking about.
I like it.
Yeah. It's my hashtags, my own new term.
Hashtag preciousness.
Preciousness. Yeah.
So does it add pressure to you? Thinking about that, you flatlined twice. Does that add pressure to you to be the best or make the most out of every situation, or try to be the most successful entrepreneur that you can possibly be?
Dude, that is one of the best questions anyone has ever asked me. In the history of me being on shows and stages and podcasts. Absolutely. And the reason I said it was a God-given purpose is I only realized this literally 2-3 months ago, and now we're November 2018. A couple months ago is when I realized that I kind of felt I never had a choice of what my purpose was to be. I felt growing up was when everyone told me my life story, it was everyone telling me what my purpose was, which is to live and live fully, but almost also feel indebted to that story, right? And so I grew up completely feeling indebted to the story, not realizing that was what feeling indebted was. But absolutely, the moment someone rejects me, which is on one of my talks, I talked about rejection, and the one rejection when I was 5 years old ruined me for the rest of my life. Just because I didn't want to lose, I didn't want to feel like I was not creating, I don't know if, I guess these days called value, but I wasn't making people happy, right? And here I am feeling so grateful to be alive. My family telling me I should be grateful to be alive, and I am, right? And I'm trying to tell everyone to be grateful and not to complain and not to live in misery. But no one gets it. In fact, people are ridiculing me for some of the way I'm speaking, and hence the whole spiritual gangsta Buddha stuff. But yeah, I mean, I found every way possible to get people to like me. I found every possible to do well in areas that can make my family proud, which meant pursuing different avenues that is meant for what I thought would make them happy. It was never really about my own happiness. The difference is, I think, between myself and my siblings is that even though I did most things to please the family, I still kind of through my actions or maybe I was considered somewhat the black sheep of the family, even though I wasn't in drugs or any of that kind of stuff. Like that's to me black sheep in my group of friends, but in my family at least, which a bunch of people who were very respectful and bowed when they saw their parents, I was in general the one who was a black sheep. And I'm the one who didn't take a job, during high school. I was the one who went and volunteered at different hospitals and did fundraising. And my parents are like, we came to this country, to so you could get a job, not for you to volunteer and work for free. Like as an immigrant or as people who, like I said, of struggle, like what the heck is working for free? Like volunteer? That's like, no, right? And here I am volunteering. And my parents had no idea they're the reason I volunteered as well. They didn't realize that when they taught me empathy, and my mom who ended up supporting the whole family, she practically was a single mother of like four. My brother, sister, myself, and my dad need a lot of care, and but she was still like a ball of positive energy. She was always telling us that just because we're broke doesn't mean we can't give people food. We cook food for ourselves. We could cook a little extra for the landlord who helps upkeep our apartment. And so she always taught me how to be thankful and grateful. And then when I grew up and got to know my own story, I realized that I'm so grateful to the community for helping me stay alive, grateful to the community for helping my family integrate into society. Couldn't speak a word of French or English, you know what I mean? So how could I not feel this immense amount of gratitude? And all I want to do is volunteer and give back. While I associate working with making money to take care of the family, I never associate working to really be thankful for the things that keep us around. You know what I mean? I didn't feel it was money. I felt it was people that kept us around. I felt it was the community that kept us around. And I couldn't articulate this other than volunteering. It's only maybe 20 years later, meaning now, now in my 40s, I'm able to articulate what I was really feeling when I was in my teenage years, right? And then that bled into, pursuing medical school. And from medical school, I said, you know what, this doesn't feel right. And that 11th hour, there's a few things that led me to saying no to medical school. One was I didn't believe in pharmacology. I didn't believe in prescribing drugs, and I love medicine and its power, but I want to be more on the preventative side. I want to be on the natural healing side. I want to also be the one who brought money, because when you work in a hospital, you see how much they're suffering, at least for sure in Canada. And I do get a sense of a lot of American hospitals needing a lot of funding. And it was great to do fundraising as a teenager and bringing even $500, $1,000, and seeing how grateful hospitals were to receive money that they could use to buy equipment or buy programs for families and support families that are suffering. Like that felt so much better than being a doctor and saying, you'll be okay. I'll take care of you. I just wanted to say, I'm affecting the entire infrastructure of healthcare, right? That felt really cool to say, I'm going to affect healthcare, not just patient by patient, right? So then, I'll continue really quickly unless you have a question with the story. How, what happened after that?
I'm just enjoying listening to your story, bro. Just go. I'm really enjoying it. I think my only follow up would be, you talked about how you were feeling when you were a teenager. Like, what were you feeling when you were a teenager? Was it, how did you get into volunteering? Was it more so like, I'm going to just say it. Did you feel guilty because,
No,
your life
it
was
wasn't
spared?
guilt. Yeah, no, it wasn't guilt at all. It was when you pursue med school, they kind of lay down the plan for you, like you got to do these things. And so there's always these programs from different hospitals that allow students to apply for to get in. And one of them was called HOPS, which stands for Hospital Opportunity Program for Students. And I did that initially to get into medical school. It was the initial thing. But then the very first day, I still remember the orientation where all these students got accepted in the program, and it was, I remember, this gastro doctor guy, and I was like, I love this. This is so cool. Like, this is so amazing. And I was like, okay, cool, cool. So then I want to do more, and I just started doing more volunteering. And then I remember I was already doing fundraising since I was a kid. I loved selling oranges since grade 1, grade 2. I used to do birthday parties. I remember at 14, I would go to a subway station with my friends in the music band, and we'd play music, like, get people to give us change and donate that to charity as well. But when I got to the hospital, I started volunteering. That's when I realized how many problems there were in this world. And it wasn't just people getting sick. It was like money. It was like nurses and doctors getting pissed off because the hospital, or maybe in general, I'm not sure at that point, the policies from somewhere was dictating certain types of patients get priority over other patients. So there could be some patients just completely screaming in pain, but I didn't understand why doctors weren't allowed to help them, and there was a whole policy behind who gets to receive care first, right? But that bothered me, right? And then I realized that's a problem. And I started saying, man, this is a lot of problems when on the outside, when you're sold the dream of being a medical doctor, it's like a perfect world there in the hospital until you get in and you're like, this is messed up, like so messed up in here. And everyone is playing their little part to improve. And I decided to play my part because I couldn't operate on anyone. I decided to play my part, and
You couldn't operate on someone. Can you imagine you walking in? You're sitting there
exactly.
just, what are you doing? I
Yeah,
feel bad. I'm just operating on this guy over here.
exactly. Yo, I just saw Doogie Howser. The guy did at 16. Why can't I do it? All right. And so I decided to just go and start volunteering and raising money instead. And everything I did that I saw people came together, I saw that as an opportunity to raise money. So when I saw we did our track, we were all in a track and field meet. So anytime there was a track and field meet, I was always the one who says, yo, let's collect money and raise them for charities. So we had all these track and field meets that would raise money for charity. Volleyball tournaments, that was my sport. So when we organized these little volleyball tournaments between high schools, again, I turned that into a fundraiser. And eventually, like I said, the 11th hour, I loved bringing money so much to these needy communities that I said, screw medicine. I'm going to figure out how to be a business person one day. And the interesting thing was, like I said, I was 18 in Quebec, and where I grew up, you could go to university at 18. And I was like, okay, if I work for 20 years, I'll get the right experience to start a business. I figured in my 40s I'd be starting my business, but now I'm in my 40s and I've built and sold and started like multiple businesses. And as you know, and the audience may know for the first time, is I've been fortunate enough to, through volunteerism as well as through philanthropic efforts, I've given tens of millions of dollars to charities. And it was a really cool experience. I'm so proud that I did that. But for the audience who's like, wow, millions of dollars of charity, that's amazing, at the end of the day, that became an addiction too. The power, the how big things were. I ended up saying yes to a lot of projects in terms of fundraising. And the truth is, I primarily said it just to get and build relationships with certain people of power. And I thought that's what I needed to do, was just really get to know powerful people like the prime president and the prime minister and all these people, right? And when I get to know them and they like me and I get them to like me, I can leverage that relationship and do bigger and bigger things. But eventually it becomes like this sinking hole, and you end up digging a deep hole for yourself because you're inauthentic, you feel fake, and then that fake feeling just kept beating me down. And then at 32, I basically said, I'm out. I left volunteerism. I left everything, and I went cold turkey, and I just took time to myself because I felt I was doing too many things for too many people, and I was not deeply connected to it, even though it did good for the community, like lung association, but I'm not deeply connected to lung cancer and stuff like that, right? And so it was a matter of just getting rid of a lot of things and then re-choosing what really matters.
I love how you put that. Like it can be an addiction. Like you go from what 18 to 32 of volunteering your time, and at any point did it get like numb to you? Like if you're continuously trying to top your last figure, your X amount of I raised this amount of millions of dollars to this charity, like did it ever just get numb to you where you were like, now I'm just trying to better my score here?
I'm not sure if I would say it's numb because I did do it almost like during the Wild West. Like it was kind of impossible to fail. Meaning I've had an open, honest discussion with people and I said, if I were to redo what I tried to do now, and this was like maybe 2009, it would have been very, very difficult for me to succeed. I literally raised money at a time where people were spending money, making millions, and then when it burst, that's when we realized no one had money, right? And then asking for money was very difficult. So, I looked really good just because I happened to have done something in the Wild West. I mean, would have I still given a lot of money? Yes, but I was in a time where there was just nothing but growth and it was normal. Everybody's growing. So I didn't feel numb, but I did feel tired. I did feel emotionally tired. I did feel like I needed a break. And then when I was taking on way too much, like 20, I think it was on maybe 20 boards / committee at one time. Imagine working full time and running a business and having 20 committee meetings a month. It was way too much, and I thought I could handle it. I thought I was Superman, and I burnt. And I did leave on a high note, but the moment I left and I walked out the last door of leaving a committee, I just fell to the ground. And I had to be, not like literally fell to the ground, but my spirit fell to the ground. And I felt I needed a lot of love and attention after that.
You go from 18 to 32, crushing it, killing it in the world of volunteering. So you do that. In the meantime, you start a family, right? You're married, you have a kid. How did that equal out as far as being an entrepreneur, crushing it, making millions, or not making millions, but contributing millions to organizations, and being a dad and a husband? Like, how did that balance look like as far as spending equal amount of times as far as raising money and being at home? Like, how did you make that work?
So good question as well. And I'll just kind of clarify the chronological order a little bit more. So at 32, I decided to go cold turkey out of the volunteerism world just to rethink about what I want to do. My business continued, but like it was the time where the bubble burst, and slowly the businesses were getting a little bit tougher, and Google came into my space, which was online directories. So for those of you who are curious, it's like Yellow Pages online, essentially. So we were first to market, and so even Yellow Pages, inquired about buying us and a whole bunch of media companies. But then we eventually sold, and it was 2012 that we sold, and that's when I decided to say it's important for me to start a family. I've always wanted to start a family, and I was just kind of too distracted by all this big time fundraising and always being in the media and just eating it all up. And because of all this, most of my relationships failed. And but then I said, you know what? I'm now in the clear. I'm going to start all over, and I want to make sure I'm a family man first and then a business person after, right? And so I was so excited about this path that I rushed into a marriage. And I remember even the day before the wedding, I already had this gulp in my throat, and I just didn't have the courage to say no. And then the very next day after our marriage, we went off to our honeymoon. And during our honeymoon, already it was feeling like a disaster. And then it was a struggle. And then she got pregnant, right? And the funny thing is, we went on a trip to where was that? Bahamas. And I was like, let's see if we could really, have a nice, good connection and see if we could resolve some of our issues on this trip. And that trip was when she got pregnant. And that was a trip when I said, you know what, this is probably not going to work out. But God has His ways, and I was meant to have my son. I was meant to have him in my life, and because he came to my life, everything changed. Now you ask about business, and this is exactly what happened. I borrowed some money, and I tried to start a business while in this marriage, but I was so depressed. I was so down. I was so angry at myself for not being strong enough to stick with my values, and that nothing worked. My business failed, my health failed, my marriage failed, everything in my life failed, and yet all I want to do was become the most amazing family man ever, right? And I was failing at that. My biggest goal, I was completely failing at. And so we separated. She moved out. We agreed to that. Eventually, I was going to sell the house anyway, so it's not like she abandoned the house. We have a very, very good relationship. I have a good relationship with the new guy as well. But early on, when she moved out, I was home with Quinn, and there's days where he's over there. And I literally just want to crawl in a hole and wish that when I go to bed, I would not wake up. There's times where, I consider, I don't think I considered, but I had thoughts of wanting to die, And as a parent, as you know, when a child cries in the middle of the night, it's kind of a sign that the child is alive, right? And but there's one night where Quinn went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, and I didn't remember him crying at all. And I was like, my heart just started racing, thinking something happened to him. Like, did he choke on a blanket or whatever? Like, I had all these like crazy thoughts. And I rushed over his room, and then there he was sitting up, first time sleeping through the night, and playing with his whatever he had in his hands. I don't remember right now, but he was smiling, just full of joy, so happy to see me. And that's when I picked him up, and I literally said to him, I'm never going to give up on you or me, never, ever again. And from that point on, I picked my ass up. And the first thing I remember thinking is, geez, if I teach him everything I know as a man right now, he's going to screw up the exact same way I screwed up. So I got to start learning from dudes who have done things better than me in the areas I want to improve on. And the first thing was being a man. I felt like a failure as a man. And then being a father, I didn't know how to be a dad when my dad and I didn't communicate that much. And so I started calling a bunch of my friends and say, yo, let's go for coffee. And they'd be like, yo, yeah, let's catch up. I'm like, dude, I have an agenda. The agenda is fatherhood. And they're like, what? Yeah, man, let's just talk about fatherhood. Let's just talk about fatherhood. And they're like, yeah, cool, sure. And so I would just meet with dudes, talk about fatherhood, talk about being a man, talking about the challenges and how they overcome, share some of my struggles vulnerably. And what led to what now is Dude Buddha was I started sharing it on Facebook saying, yo, met up my boy Trey, and he's like shared me the story, and I learned so much from it. I thought I'd share with you guys here on Facebook, and if it works, take it and run with it. It might change your life as it did for me, right? I would share stuff like that every time I met with someone. And eventually people started following me, and people started sharing my posts, and in some posts went quote unquote viral. I won't say millions or anything, but a few posts went pretty viral and reached men who had never ever met, and getting messages from dudes I've never met before. I think that was like the moment I thought, this is incredible. A lot of men really need a space to connect, and these words, these wisdoms, these nuggets that I'm borrowing from other men to share with other men, this is powerful stuff. And so then I started hosting some meetings online. It's another story how it ended up online. It was face to face, but it moved online primarily because some men were suffering and they didn't want to show their face. And so I made it anonymous. It was Google Hangouts, just show up. Topic today is sex and relationship. Next topic is how to raise a little man. Next topic is how to handle crazy teenage girls, and we just came up with different topics based on questions. I brought in experts, and I did this for free. And then the group just grew into the hundreds and hundreds. People in Germany, Switzerland, Italy, New York. And here I am doing this part-time because I was slowly building my dental advisory stuff at the time. And I would have never thought that something that I did for me would blow up to, in my terms, I guess blow up, because when you expect it to be ever never to go anywhere, where it is today is considered blowing up for me. And now where it's led to, which is I was saving for kind of this part of the story to tell your audience, is that I'm running an anonymous based community for men where they could be completely anonymous. I invite them. It's invite or referral based only. At the end of the day, I still have to invite them. They jump on my community. They change their name to a code name, and they could say whatever the F they want. And when you read some of the comments men are putting into this community, of course, with the intention of resolution or support, it's unfiltered, guy. Like, dude, it's crazy. It's so unfiltered, the stuff these guys talk about. And I'm so happy that they have a space to speak about it. And then I bring in the community, I bring in the professionals, psychologists, psychotherapists, consultants, lawyers, all that. I bring them all into the community anonymously to support the men. And so this entire story, where many moments of darkness that came into my life ended up really, and this goes back to your most brilliantly amazing first question, did I feel pressure? What happened through all this journey was I went from what I felt was a God-given purpose to me to finally discovering what I feel is my true purpose.
That's so powerful, dude. And you kind of put a lot of pressure on me saying that was my best question ever, because now I feel like all my other questions are going to be crap.
No, there's only you're going up you've been going up ever since, man. This is great.
So, man, I want to say thank you for joining, or not joining, but thank you for creating that group. I think it's great that you're doing that for men. I know I get a lot of questions about the happiness and the depressed and the values, what you touched upon, like with when you were married and you felt depressed because of your values, like you felt like your values were in question, right? Like, why did you feel that? Like, what were your values and why were they in question?
Good one, actually. I think like my values is, as you can see, family, community base, and the real situation was, if you remember, I talked about how the power of volunteerism and being a successful entrepreneur became an addiction, right? You became fake. You didn't like yourself. I married a woman when I didn't even know myself.
Holy crap.
Right?
That's some powerful shit right there, bro.
Yeah, thank you.
That is honest. Thank you for being honest on that one, because I don't think a lot of men do that. I think and I don't mean to cut you off. I want you to continue, but I just want to throw this out there. I think a lot of guys are rushed into things because society says so. But with that said, go ahead and continue.
Yeah, so I didn't know myself, and what I also learned as I got to know my ex-wife even more, even though we had like a 10-year friendship, was, in her own world too, she also didn't take the journey to recognize who she was and what was important to her. And so we both had to own that responsibility. Now, years later into this process, I don't remember which father shared this with me in my group, but one of the guys shared, whether it be a blog or maybe a conversation he had, and he took a snippet of it. But the important point of this was, it was a statement that says 99% of people out there, at least these days, go into the relationship completely broken. The ideal way of entering a relationship is being in a position where you fully are in touch with who you are, and two people recognize that they are on their individual journeys of self-discovery, self-love, complete uncaging of everything that's locked us down our entire life, and welcoming that with non-judgment. Right? Two people have to feel complete. I remember, two people have to feel complete before entering a relationship. And complete doesn't mean I'm done, I've arrived. Complete is knowing that you've fully taken the time to get to know who you are and stand for what you believe for.
Why did you feel rushed when you got married the first time?
Dude, honestly, I just kind of came up with a dialogue thinking I should have a family started and have children soon. I just, based on maybe family, all my friends had kids, we compare ourselves to other people. People have houses and cars and children, and they're having play dates, and here you are, traveling the world and doing volunteer projects, and everyone's asking you, are you ever going to slow down and have a family? You're getting old, dude. And I fell into the story of what most people told me, and out of love, of course, people, that's their paradigm of thinking, and assumingly it's what they thought was best for me. So I rushed into it, and I wasn't thinking. I was very emotional. Like I said, I was broken and completely out of touch with myself. So there's no other rhyme or reason other than I thought I made decisions based on an inauthentic me.
So when you were depressed and you thought that your values were in question, it was because you just weren't happy. You had the family, you had the son, and society says you're supposed to be happy. You have all these things. You have a house, you have a wife, you have a son, and you felt like you were doing something wrong. Like, explain that. I don't think a lot of guys know that. I mean, I feel like it's okay to feel these things. Like you said, you didn't fully know who you were when you went into it. You were kind of, society was talking, chirping in your ear, saying, hey, you need to do this by this age. You're getting a little bit older. You need to be married. You need to have a kid, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, blah. You have these things and you're not happy, and you feel bad about it. Like, you feel like, what is wrong with me? Because I have these things that society's saying that I should have, but I'm not happy. Like, talk about that. Like, why is it
Totally, dude.
Like, why is it that I don't even know how to explain it. Like, why is it that, there's nothing wrong with us. It's just that society talks us into doing things that isn't right in our hearts. And then we suffer, and then we think we're the problem.
Totally. And I'll tell you, there's two levels, and I know everybody can relate to this, because when you're in a relationship with a lot of problems, and many people who do personal, I guess, development work will understand this, because that's what I learned. But we all go from the victim, villain, hero kind of mode. Like, at one time I was like, fuck, man, I put all this work, I took care of my family, why does it have to happen to me? Like, what's going on? I was angry, because at first the anger came from the fact that I felt like a complete victim. I felt that I did everything for this woman, and she completely did not even appreciate me at all. Like, she just selfish, and then I went on a villain. I attacked her. I called her selfish. Maybe I don't remember if I actually ever called this to her face. I'm generally a pretty peaceful guy, so maybe I thought this, right? And I was just like angry at her, and I was just like thinking all these bad things about her, not like death or anything, but just thinking how nasty and evil she was. And I went on this attack mode. And then during the relationship, I was in a hero mode, thinking, I'm here to save this family. I'm here to save everyone in my sight, right? And when you're delivering millions of dollars to people, and people are like, thank you, thank you, thank you, you get this stupid ego, and then you get into this hero mode. And then when that triangle starts taking turns, and they take over, you put on these hats and take turns putting on the hat, one hat to the next hat, the next hat. You start building the cycle of anger and frustration and guilt and pain. And when it falls apart, you don't know what to think anymore, right? And so that's the first thing. But the real disappointment comes from, and I know everyone can relate to this, because I've had this discussion with, and it's even in a fully unfiltered anonymous setting, everyone actually feels extreme disappointed that they never listened to their gut. They never listened to themselves, and they're really disappointed in themselves. It boils down to that.
Like right now, imagine that you're 70 years old, looking back on your life. What are your regrets? Like, that's what really keeps me up at night, is thinking about what I'm going to regret when I'm 70 or 80 or 90. That's some powerful stuff, dude. Thank you so much for sharing that. Like, what was the turning point? I mean, yeah, you had mentioned your son not crying, and you running in there and not waking him up, but seeing him sitting in the crib and looking at you, and you making that statement to him, like, I'm going to take care of you from here on out. Like, we're going to be a team. Like, what was your next step? Like, what did you do after that to kind of like solidify your independence?
Well, I mean, after that was a series of therapist meetings, like on top of just hanging out with a bunch of dudes, right? The dude Buddha thing. But I generally sought a hypnotherapist. I sought a mind-body entrepreneur named Mark Laham. He's amazing. Yoga teacher who ended up. This guy worked with so many entrepreneurs as a yoga teacher, and then they all kind of opened up to him. So I saw that people were going to see him lots, and so I went to see him, and he shifted my mindset. So a lot of mindset training, a lot of habit retraining, and it was surrounding myself with different types of people, reading different books. I'm a YouTuber, like meaning I'm not a YouTuber. I love YouTube. I love video. I like consume through videos. So I watch a ton of YouTube videos, and just to bring myself to a point where I can find people and content that I could resonate with and then apply to my own life. And even that journey was a journey where it's up and down. For example, right now there's people listening to me, and every time I put something out there, there's always some immigrant person that messages me and says, "Oh, I can relate to you," right? And I look at the man in the mirror, and I'm a visible minority. I am an immigrant, so it's great to be able to for someone to hear my story, and that part resonates with them. It's great when a fellow dad says, "Yo, man, I'm in a tough relationship," and that part about like gut, man, like that's great. I did the exact same thing. I was on the receiving end this time, and after my son, the first thing was talking to cool dads, but finding the best books that fellow dads recommended, going to events where I could connect with people that might have a similar journey and might share some of their greatest lessons with me as well, building new friendships that can raise me and where I feel it can raise them. It was just a process of elimination and investment into areas that I felt made me or helped me unleash more of what was trapped inside.
I love it, dude. I mean, I think a lot of people look at themselves as, especially dads, and I don't mean to like, kind of talk more so on the fatherhood and not so much on motherhood, but I think we can relate as far as being fathers and husband, that if you don't feel right, like if right. So how long were you married before you decided that the marriage wasn't right?
So after about 18 months, we said, you know what, let's just make sure we're happy people for our son.
18 months. So
Yeah.
I think a lot of people go 20 years before they realize this, and they're a quarter of their lives are gone. And it doesn't it goes back to you saying, follow your gut. Like, your values are what your parents tell you. Your values are what, whatever religion you're in tells you. But at the end of the day, if you are genuinely not happy with where you're at in your life, as far as it could be marriage, it could be whatever, like you have to make a decision, either take, at the fork in the road, either go left or right. And if you continue left, you're going to continue down that, unhappiness. And you knew it. You knew exactly that. I mean, you felt like you were just not yourself. You weren't, you knew you were unhappy, but you couldn't allow yourself to continue down that path. And I think a lot of people get comfortable with where they're at as far as finances and security and stuff like that. And of course, children, play a role in it too, as far as, am I being a good father? Am I being a good husband? Am I being selfish? That's the biggest question, right? Like, am I being selfish? What is your thought on that? Like, are guys allowed to feel that way? Like, do you think it's being selfish, or is it just being happy?
I think, selfish is such an interesting word because it is such a gray space for so many people, right? I went from feeling selfish to feeling used, to feeling too generous, to feeling greedy. And at the end of the day, to me, if the feeling you have is a feeling, and you could call it selfishness or whatever, but if it's a feeling that makes you feel like you're losing the essence of who you are, then whatever that feeling is that is leading to find you is not considered selfish, right? But to me, if it's a feeling that is based on greed and acquiring things, and it's not about internal release of who you are, versus it's like very externally driven, I think that is my definition of selfish, right? So for me, I was selfish to want me to not feel trapped anymore. I didn't want to feel caged. And that's why I love, your superior self. I get it because I believe that every person's superior self is already there. like an acorn. This is Derek Rydell, one of the guys I interviewed on my podcast, and it was like an incredible interview. By the way, if you don't know this guy, I should connect you with him because it's like he was so good. And he shared with me his acorn, to be an oak tree, and it's just a matter of environment, right? And so we all have everything we need, and the superior self is already in you. And I actually felt it. I went from now the days where I feel kind of like challenged and stressed and having some anxiety, it's because I know my superior self is right there, and some kind of stupid dialogue that I have in my head is trapping my superior self from getting out. And to me, that is the journey that I think most of us are on, especially those who are on the path of trying to find their superior self and releasing it. For the rest of my life, I will, continually battle the ups and downs of making sure my superior self does not get trapped ever again. And I have to say, it was buried. I buried it myself for many, many years, but now I feel like it's just right there, and it surfaces up, it comes back down. But I could feel the superior self in me just slowly, just kind of like in a action movie, when a guy's like slowly curves from his knees and he's kind of getting up and he stands up tall, and that crescendo in the music. Like, I feel myself in that moment where I'm just standing up after a long battle, and I'm victorious because I know who I want to be, and I know where I want to go. And I'm willing to face the battles to get there.
Yeah. Have you ever listened to David Goggins?
Oh yeah, that guy is incredible. I don't believe he's human though, but yeah, he's a guy is crazy. Oh my goodness.
So he talks about his moment, like his favorite part in a movie of Rocky. Have you heard about that? Like, I think it's round 14 or so, like when Apollo is just beating the crap out of him, and I think it's round 14, but he gets knocked down. Like, he is completely wasted energy wise. He is done. And like his coach, what's his name? Mick or Mickey or whatever. Yeah. Mickey's like, stay down, Rock, stay down. Like, don't get up. And Rocky's like not having it at all. He like, he's the referee or whatever is like counting him out. He's counting, and he stands up. And Rocky's not giving up. He doesn't care. He's been beaten up so bad. He's not giving up. And when he stands up and Apollo Creed sees this, the look in his eye of like, Jesus, like, is this guy serious? Like that look in his face where he's like, you got to be kidding me. Like, that is what I'm talking about. Like, that right there is the desire to never quit. That right there, that look in Apollo Creed's face is life. When it beats the shit out of you and you continue to get up hit after hit is what I live for. And that's how you have to live your life. Like, no matter what happens to you, no matter what winter brings or what problems you face as a man, as a father, as a husband, you keep going. It doesn't matter how many times life hits you in the face. It doesn't matter if it's round 14 or 50. You keep getting up and you keep facing Apollo Creed and you keep going after it and getting after it, because at the end of the day, what are we here for? We're here to get better, right? And the only way you're going to get better is if you keep going forward.
Totally.
So,
dude,
I want to say,
yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
On the boxing analogy, because I've kind of shared this, but actually never in public online or anything. So it's the first time I'm sharing on a podcast. But it's true. You get up and you fight. You take these punches and stuff like that. But the round always ends, and you get to sit down, take a breather, and you have someone backing you up. Mickey's backing him up. And in this case, so all the dads who are taking a beating, we still need to sit down after a round, recuperate, listen to someone who's kind of watching over our shoulders. And, I mean, that's a battle rink. But in my case, what I tell my fellow friends is that, if you're feeling down and out, sit down and get on the side a bit. But don't forget to give yourself a hug too. Right. And I learned that from my yoga teacher. He's like, dude, man, if you guys are feeling down and after a day being beaten up at work, just give yourself a hug, then get back to battle. Right. And I remember he says, you deserve it. Everyone deserves a hug if they went through battle and came home and they've taken a few bruises, but they're home, they're chilling, it's okay. Right. So, I just want to remind everyone that, yeah.
I think that what I tend to do is like I go from accomplishment to accomplishment and not really take the time to like recognize what I've done, right? Like, so I'm always like on to the next thing. Like, I started a podcast and then I'm on to blah, blah, blah. I'm on to my next vision. I'm on to that. Like, I don't take the time to like really take in and bask in the accomplishment of doing this. Like, I created something from nothing. And I think we need to do that. Like, if you go round 14 in a boxing match, like, and you're in there and you're taking your rest and you're getting water and you're getting a towel or whatever, like, you just went 14 rounds. Like, take the small wins, like, recognize those, like, because it can be like a momentum builder. Like, you have to be able to recognize that you're creating something, you're doing something great, you're doing, you're raising money, or you're being a great father, or you're being a great husband. Like, the small wins, you have to like take the time and appreciate that, because at the end of the day, if you just keep going forward physically, and you keep working and you keep pushing and you keep going, like, physically you'll be fine, but mentally you'll be way back where you started.
Totally. Totally, dude. Well said. Love it. Totally love it.
I want to say thank you for joining the show today, T. How can people connect with you?
They can hit me up at dudebuddha.com. That's DUDEBUDDHA.com. You can also email me at Tuan, TUAN, at dudebuddha.com as well. And those are great ways. Just send me an email, reach out to me. I'm pretty good at getting back, 48 hours or so in this day and age of technology. And it's because I spend time with my family. But that's how you could easily get in touch with me. Fill out the form or email me. Love to hear from you guys.
So lastly, before I let you go, I want to kind of get you to, talk to me like I am the listener. I am the listener right now listening to your Superior Yourself podcast, and I have the pleasure of having you on here. I'm going to give you a scenario, right? So I am a entrepreneur. I am a father. I am a husband. I'm not happy in my life. I need to make a decision. All right. So I need to make a decision on whether or not I'm going to continue down this path of uncertainty, of unhappiness. I need to figure it out. Well, I guess it wouldn't be necessarily at home, but it would be at work, right? So I need you to talk me up. I need you to inspire me to make a change. I'm scared to death, man. I need you to talk to me right now.
No problem, dude. So listen, Trey, I know exactly how you feel, and you're all unique, and it's okay, first of all, to feel that. As much as people say that, it is okay, but now it's time to do something about it, dude. And I'll tell you, the first thing to do is to actually surround yourself with the right environment. And the right environment is what you consume, who you talk to, what you eat, and what you do with your life. So first things first is ask yourself, who do I surround yourself with? And if I am around people who draw my energy down and not give me an energy, then it's time to look into the people who give me energy and spend more time with them. Next is to consume things that matter to you. If you enjoy basketball, dude, I love dancing. So first thing I did when I was down and out was I just watching more dance videos, starting with Michael Jackson, because that was my inspiration. And it brought me back to this curiosity self of mine. And when I became curious, it's when I start searching for answers in the proper way. Because when you're curious, you end up finding answers. Last is give before asking for anything in return. Find things that matter to you and start giving. When you create all these three come together, they create this community of content to people, to as well as who you end up becoming when you give. And I trust that in there, you'll find the answer that's going to lead you to greater joy, happiness, and ultimately a purposeful mission that you will embark on. There you go, bro.
I love it, T. Thank you so much, dude. Thank you for joining the show. I really do appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. Much love to you and your family.
Thanks, my man. Thank you, Tuan, for coming on the show and hanging out and being honest and open and sharing your story. Thank you to the listener for downloading this episode and hanging out to this point. It's a big accomplishment for some. Be able to listen to me for this long. It's awesome. Thank you guys so much for your love. Thank you for the downloads. Make sure to rate and review us. Please subscribe. Please leave a rating and a review wherever you get your downloads from. Please follow me on Instagram at tdowns80, at Twitter at downstrey. Hit me up on Facebook at any time at Trey Downs, Downes, and I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your story. I would love to hear what you're working on. I want to reach out to the audience, to my superior nation, and reach out and hear your stories and help if I can in any way. So I love you guys. Have a good night, and I'll talk to you later.